Welcome back, folks. So, as you just would have seen, here was an opportunity for us to tell our why statement, what I've got drawn right here. Okay, I just want you to keep that in mind. You don't have to put that up on the whiteboard anytime you get ready to do this. Just always keep it as a frame of reference in your mind why we exist as an organization. Remember, it's about making every bit of their data available to them, making it as insightful as it possibly can be, and then certainly giving them the opportunity to make some kind of decisive action on data that's of the highest referential value. That's why we exist. And that's why that first video that you saw where I'm doing this in real time makes no mention of product. If you accept why we exist and you embrace and emote why we exist as an organization, then the technology stack or the software that we may deploy, none of that really matters. Everything should be driven by those three key attributes. Now, it's hard to actually have a whiteboarding session where you're not talking about products. So in this video, let's tell that same why statement, except now let's do this in more of that real time, focused around specific products. So if you feel more comfortable telling the story this way, and you feel the first option is more high level in nature, that's fine. It's just a different way to tell the exact same story. All right, let's get started. Hey, thanks a lot for joining me today. I really wanted to take an opportunity to talk to you about why we exist as an organization inside of Hitachi Vantara. We refer to ourselves as the content and data intelligence business, and we really focus on doing three solid things for every one of our customers. It's why we exist. We really want to do everything possible to make every bit of the data that you deem necessary, that's of the highest referential value to you, available to the right people who need it at the right time they need it, anywhere they are. And not just giving them any kind of data, but data that's of the highest value, data that's very impactful, data that has insightfulness to it. Why would we do that? Well, it's obvious, but ultimately the goal is so that those people can take action on it. Now, what's interesting here is where the data actually comes from. Right? So today you may have a really good concept around who is actually producing the data that you're being requested to store or make use of. You may have a really, really firm understanding of the different kinds of applications that these people need to have access to. Now, there's a good chance that those applications can certainly be structured in nature. Maybe these are databases or something that is critical to the business. And then there are these other types of documents or objects, as we refer to them, that exist within the organization that you may have to deal with that don't necessarily fit in the norm of a database. It could be a Word document, it could be a PowerPoint file, it could be a video, just like the one that I'm doing for you right now. It could be audio clips, maybe a call recording system. It could be images. It could be large data types like geospatial analysis, etc. But all of this data is coming in at speeds that are unprecedented in today's market. I mean, if you just think about the number of producers, these people right here, or if you consider devices that may reside on the edge of the business, so think Internet of Things, if you will, right? Or solutions that may be deployed by the organization that are actually web-based in nature. Or maybe they have more legacy applications that they have to deal with that don't really fit the mold of unstructured data. They certainly have responsibilities to the business in terms of its criticality and its use. Maybe they have these highly transactionable, non-controlled pieces of data coming into the business at any one time that they have responsibility for. Right? Maybe they're using products such as, let's say, more of a legacy Oracle system. Maybe Microsoft kinds of applications, homegrown applications. Maybe they even have partners that they work with or acquisitions that they've made, and all of the applications that they may have out there. Whether those applications are traditional client server like we've just talked about, or maybe these are applications that are more mobilized or mobile friendly or mobile ready. My point here is that there's a tremendous amount of data. There's a tremendous amount of data producers that are out there, and those producers are not just humans. They're not just internets of things. They are applications, they are messaging systems, they are different kinds of devices that are producing data at rapid speeds, all looking for solace or asylum inside of the data center itself. Now, some of these applications may be cloud ready or more modernized with the ability to directly connect into the data center, especially as I talk to you about the products that we bring to bear to help address the why we exist. But then there's going to be these other considerations that have to be made, where the requirement is to have an intermediary service that allows us to ingest data at really, really fast speeds, or that knows how to translate the communication layer between the application and the solutions that I'm going to be talking to you about today. So in the market, we tend to refer to these things as gateways. All a gateway is going to do is provide you a very standardized, easy to deploy application stack or hardware stack that's going to allow you to make that translation occur. Again, we're not changing the content, we're only translating the way in which it communicates with its intended source. So in the Hitachi content and data intelligence portfolio, the very first product that I would talk to you about is that gateway product. And we refer to this as the Hitachi data ingester. The Hitachi data ingester is doing exactly what its name implies. It is acting as an intermediary service or gateway that does the translation of protocols. It's an awesome remote office, branch office solution that allows you to push the data closer to where it's being created, closer to the people that actually need access to that data. There are some organizations that we work with that use this as an ingestion engine. Meaning that they know that the data is going to be coming at them so quickly that they want to have this caching layer available to them to drop the data on so the application generating it can keep working. And then allow the relationship between the data ingester and the next product that I'm going to talk to you about down the line here to be able to sort of trickle or feed that data in so that you're not holding the application or the workers up. There are some other opportunities here, especially when you look at it from a remote office, branch office perspective. So whether that is a traditional sort of, you've got a corporate office in one location and you've got a bunch of different offices thrown all around your specific region, or maybe you have partner-based relationships with different vendors and you want to give them a way to consistently and in a very controlled fashion access specific kinds of data that you want to expose to them then you can put this Hitachi data ingester in all of these locations, and now you have a way to get the data to them much faster. In other words, cache it at that localized location so that they would be able to access it and continue to work with it. The best part, though, is all of this is actually controlled by a policy or multiple policies, depending on your configuration, that you're going to set up around it. So this determines who has access to what data for how long, and it also controls how long that data is going to stay there, how it's protected, a bunch of other specific features that you can actually use to push data closer to the edge of your business, and certainly, make it more important and more localized to their business. So this right here is more of a controlled access to data. Versus this as being more of direct access. Now, not everything has to be directly accessible. I just happened to throw it up here like this to show you that you have options. So again, these are more modernized applications, more modernized way of getting data into the data center. These tend to be more highly structured or highly controlled communication mechanisms to get data into the data center. But if you have 4,300% more producers of data by 2019, and a lot of that data has no referential value to your business at all, coming from different locations, from different kinds of devices, and from different regional areas. And it's quite clear that beyond a gateway, what you really need is a layer of intelligence that allows you to really control the data quality before you even allow it into your data center. What's the second part of the portfolio I want to introduce you to? So data quality foundational framework. It's called Hitachi Content Intelligence. Now, it's not a necessity. You certainly don't have to have it here. But the more time that you spend with me, the more that you're going to realize that when I think about my responsibility to you, making your data available is one thing, but making it insightful means that we need to be focused on ensuring its quality right when we are thinking about capturing it. So Hitachi Content Intelligence is what I use to do just that. By laying this here inside of the data stream, as data comes in, there are a number of things that I can do on that data. Basically, I'm going to run through a series of pipelines that are going to evaluate the data on a number of conditions that I get to set up, I get to define. I get to do pattern matching and data profiling. So, for example, if I'm very concerned about making sure that sensitive data does not come into the organization, I can scan for it, look for those patterns, and I can just choose to, anonymize that data or mark it in such a way so that only the appropriate people later on in this process will actually have access to it. That's the pattern matching piece of it. I can also do extractions, transformations, and load that data into new locations. Now, what we refer to this in the traditional market as is ETL. So when you hear someone talk about an ETL solution, this is exactly what they're talking about. Now, we've extended ETL to mean a number of things beyond just simply extracting data, playing around with a copy of the data and then loading it into some other application or some other kind of use case. In our case, when we do extractions and transformations, we start looking at things such as, are all of the dates in the appropriate format? Are all currencies in the appropriate monetary state based on where you're located? So everything being in US dollars, etc. We can do augmentations to the data. For example, if you have a policy in place that says that all data must be geotagged because you're going to use that to understand how it is distributed throughout the world or throughout what you consider your organization's edge to be, then you can certainly geotag that data. We can also customize this foundation to create our own unique processing plugins. For example, if you wanted to attach a monetary score to a particular document as it was coming in to indicate the level of risk that it may cause your business, you could create your own customized plugin, and then you can attach that value to the data. Now, what's interesting about our data quality foundation here is that we're not changing the contents at all. Right? What we're really doing here is we're messing around or modifying the metadata itself, adding additional ways to describe that data to make it much easier for the people that need to take action to draw the insight by finding the data that they need when they need it. Right? That's kind of what we've been talking about so far. Now, what you do with the data at this point is completely up to you. Right? So one option here would be to go ahead and create for yourself an index. Now, why would you do this? So an index allows you to do things such as search for data. It allows you to explore the data. And it certainly allows you to categorize that data so that you can move it and make use of it in different ways, in different shapes, and certainly in different applications. Now, not only can I create an index, one of my other options here is I can also take actions on it. Now, by actions, I could make a copy, I can migrate, I can push it to a new location, I can notify another application that I have it. There's a number of things that I can do in terms of the actions that I can take on the data once I've determined its quality, once I've made the appropriate changes to the metadata to make it more insightful so that I then know what to do with it. Either allow it to find its way into the data center, index it to make it easier to locate later on for another process, or actually take some very specific actions on it. This product itself, turns out, it has more than 35 different processing stages, all categorized in different ways. So taking action, extracting, transforming, augmenting, smoothing, normalizing. There's a ton of things that are out there, but it turns out there is more than 35 of these, and don't forget what I said, which is it is customizable. So if you find that the 35 that we have doesn't match a specific use case that you have, then by all means, we have a completely published library on how you build out your own extensions, both in the way the data is processed and the things that you're connecting to. Fantastic. So we've got the data coming in from all these producers. Sometimes it's a direct connection, sometimes it requires a gateway. And we also have a data quality foundation layer that's going to act as sort of the gatekeeper, if you will, to that data before it comes in. Now, if you've been with me so far, you would have known that I would have said to you that one of the biggest problems that organizations have is knowing what data they have and where it's located. Right here, my friends, this right here is the sole responsibility of this foundational layer. Because once I've created that customized metadata, once I've augmented the file or the object itself to make it more insightful and more useful, then I'm going to centralize that data onto the sort of the everything to the overall portfolio. It's our Hitachi content platform. Now, the Hitachi content platform is, for all intents and purposes, an object storage solution. The reason why this is so critical at this juncture is it's really about centralizing that highest quality of data. Because what we know is that data that is centralized is much easier to find. It's also much easier to apply policies against to determine access and use. Object storage solutions in general are highly scalable, both up and out, as well as down and in. And I don't just mean capacity, I also mean in performance and capabilities. Metadata becomes the key. It's almost becoming more important than the content of the file itself. When you look at the content platform from Hitachi, we actually have recognized the industry's best metadata and most customizable metadata capability when it comes to how we augment the data and continue to describe it in net new ways. It also, by its multi-node relationship or architecture, provides all the data protection that you'll need. We use terms such as erasure coding or geodispersed erasure coding, but essentially what it means is as you look at the way in which this product is deployed, and I'll just use this little icon here with the term HCP, the way that this product can be deployed, and I'll just leave it as a 3-node relationship. We can essentially create replication relationships between these locations so that the data is available at any one time. So should one location go down, you still have access to that data in other locations, right? The last part, aside from data protection, and there are a ton of them, we'll get into more detail on that at another time. I just want to give you a quick overview, is this is a great foundation for your hybrid cloud. And we accomplish this through our implementation of the industry standard S3 protocol. What that means is that data can stay in your data center. It can be migrated or it can be replicated to other locations within your entire cluster, but what it also can be is tiered to those traditional cloud vendors that you probably are very, very well aware of. So Google, Microsoft, AWS is another good one. You know, even Hitachi's own enterprise cloud, Hitachi Enterprise Cloud. So data can be tiered to these. So we can tier them automatically, right, through policies that we set up, or we can manually push them. We can also use this as an interesting bridge. So data that may immediately get put into the cloud or generated in the cloud that needs to find a way back to the data center for some kind of regulatory or compliance responsibility is certainly all doable within the way that the content platform operates with these other providers. So it's any provider that operates with data movement and access via the S3 protocol, right? So again, a ton of features here that we're not going to get a chance to get into specifically, but it creates that core foundation that allows you to scale its capacity to match where your business needs to get to in the future. So these 4,300 producers that I mentioned over here, 4,300% increase in producers, I mentioned over here, needing to find its way here must first go through a gateway that you will define, and that gateway will help make sure that you're only keeping the data that has value to the business, right? So this is our cloud generation centralized data hub. Now, folks, if you can centralize your data, if you can ensure that it's of the highest quality and you can apply policies to it, policies that are based on the metadata that you've used to further refine and define that data, then you can make it portable. You can mobilize that data and you can deliver the same kinds of end-user conveniences that a traditional person would be out looking for a free cloud-based storage solution. We all know who they are. But you could deliver that to them in a way that it is just as easy as that solution without compromising the needs of the business. And so what I'm talking about here is data mobility. And we deliver data mobility through a product called Hitachi Content Platform, or HCP, Anywhere. Now, HCP Anywhere is a product that connects directly to our HCP. It creates a number of spaces for end-user files, not just end-user files that they may want to sync and share, but also endpoint-based backup and recovery. Now, these policies that you apply determine a number of things, such as, is the data that they have access to something that can be shared in the network? Is it something that can be shared outside of the organization? There's a number of ways for you to determine what those policies are. But now imagine this. Look what I've done for you here. I've talked about how we can use the node-based relationship of the cluster and the way that we handle things such as versioning or the replication of data to alleviate the need for traditional data protection mechanisms. Now what I'm talking about here is not just being able to give our end users an opportunity to do file synchronization and sharing, but now also end user file backups. Let me ask you this, have you ever had to deal or worried yourself about things such as ransomware? There are a number of folks just like you that are dealing with this every day. Have you also needed to worry about users who accidentally delete a file and they're just like, hey, I need you to load up this backup set that you've got for me and then allow me to do that recovery? Well, with the versioning, you get self-service recoverability. That means that there's no longer a need for the IT team to worry about taking those kinds of calls in. The IT team can now go off and solve the kinds of things that they were asked to solve when they were hired in the first place. Check this out. Because we're doing versioning, I can now roll back, not just recover from a loss, but actually roll back to previous versions of files. A good example would be if I were to try to save a file and the save failed, and I wound up with 0 bytes, that would really upset me. But I can actually just go into the portal, look at the file itself, look at the previous versions, pick a version that matches what I need, and then just promote that to be the most current. But what this right here is all about is getting data to the edge of the business, wherever that edge may be. Now what I'm talking about is, this could be my smart device, my smartphone. It could actually be my tablet, and we're talking about iOS, we're talking about Android, whatever you need, even those Windows phones, if you still have one. I don't think we have support for BlackBerry though, I'm sorry, but maybe we do. My point though is that when we think about an endpoint device, we're not just thinking about those traditional mobile devices that we keep in our pocket and we subscribe to every time we hear that ding. I'm also talking about those laptops that are on the edge. Not just the laptops that are issued by IT, but also the ones that are owned by the end user themselves. I actually did an example test here where I went to a location, I didn't have my laptop with me, and I just simply logged on to a network-connected device, opened up my HCP Anywhere folder, found the file that I needed, downloaded it, opened it up, and I continued a conversation just like this with another customer. This is a great tool because this gets me everything that I need from an end user perspective in a way that is very, very convenient. Right? Very convenient for me. Simple to use, point and click, no problem. But all of this is policy controlled. That's what I mean when I say we don't compromise the requirements of the business in this kind of a solution. Not only is everything policy controlled, but everything is actually indexable, if that is a word, by Hitachi Content Intelligence. So now, if you wanted to know how data was being used by your end users, to make sure that things weren't getting shared that may not be allowed, such as if the word draft is in a document or the word content intelligence is in a document. I can look for those kinds of patterns and just know if there are opportunities for me to step in and make changes to policies and educational services to make sure that my own staff is operating in a way that I expect them to when it pertains to getting data to the far edge, the very extreme edge of the business, making it both mobilized as well as portable to be used in different kinds of services that they may be performing for the business itself. So this is a way for us to handle the mobility side, but I'd like to bring back that data quality engine. So now let's call this intelligent access. So this is where we would have content intelligence. Again, all right, so with content intelligence on this end, what we're really talking about is providing access to all of that data. Again, data that may be in HCP anywhere. Data that may be directly inside of our HCP, and even data that may be in one of these clouds way up here. And by intelligent access, what we're talking about here are executing queries to find that data. We're talking about grouping data based on their categories, based on their value to the business. We're talking about accessing that data, talking about taking action on that data, etc., etc., etc. All of this allows us now to start feeding any number of use cases that you maybe be running within your organization, right? So whether that is innovations, whether that is some kind of compliance-related activity that you have responsibility to provide either reports for or adherence to, or whether this is just a means for you to continually optimize your organization by changing what you do or feeding that data, that data that has been augmented and made more useful into other kinds of applications. So feeding it into some kind of BI suite or a visualization tool, or being able to take data from a legacy application, bring it through, modify it in terms of turning it into, let's say, XML, still queryable, pushing it through onto the content platform, and now making it available on the far end here for any kind of back office processes to have access to it. Folks, what I have just drawn for you is the very reason why we exist as an organization, but I've done so from a product level perspective. What I'm talking about is everything that we are doing up to this point. This is all about making your data available to you. That's all availability. Right here, right where this sort of data quality framework is, getting it all the way into the content platform itself is all about making that data not just available, but also insightful. And then lastly, making it actionable. Allowing you to do with that data what you need to support your business requirements and goals, whether that's taking it on the edge to your customers, your mobilized workforce, if you will, or getting all the way out here into these use cases. And folks, what I have just drawn for you here is a core foundation for how you should be operating as a business altogether. That's why I drew the little infinity symbol at the end, because those actions that you can take by creating this kind of a data strategy, this kind of a foundational layer to support where you need to have your data and for what reason, answers those questions. What data do I have? Where's it located? Why do we have it? How is it being used? Is there better ways for us to make use of it? And more importantly, the responsibility now gets spread across two things: a person and a foundational layer from Hitachi. It has been my pleasure to share this with you. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, but we can do this today because we partner with you to make this happen. I'd like to tell you a lot more, and we can go into very, very specific details and demonstrations of these products. Let's do that now.